So I think I know most of you, but there's some faces that don't. So hi, I'm Xander. I'm from the UK originally. I now run my own company called Strive, and our tagline is for a better world. So it's a personal development platform for social entrepreneurs, coaches, people who are just trying to make a change in their life. And I was actually, a few weeks ago, it was by chance, I was in Serbia and I got asked to do a TEDx talk. So I was actually going to do the TEDx talk that I did back then. That's what we'd originally discussed, which was about kind of how our own development affects society and things like that. And although we were chatting about it, it's an interesting topic. When we were doing the goals thing yesterday, it felt like some of the tools that we created in our business previously to help people who change their lives. We've been fortunate enough to help over 12,000 people use some of our software in the last year since we started the company. I thought it might be good just to use that to frame some of the discussion and share some of the research, because clearly we've got a group of people who all want to, make the most out of life, and we're doing these weekly goal sessions. So if we can add something to it, I thought that might be more useful. So is that okay if I share that with you guys? Okay, cool. Well, before I dive into that, I guess from the goal session we did yesterday, we break it up into two different aspects, don't we? The personal life and the professional life, at least how we did it in the Sharks group. Is that how you did it in the Penguins group? Kind of? What did you...
Some people generally, they'll say, yeah, professionally I want to do this, but at this level, I'm more than this.
Okay, cool. So I want to ask you guys, is that the only two ways you think about your life and measure about whether it's the way you want it to be? Oh, we're seeing some no's there, seeing some no's. Okay, no. So if that's not, how do you measure? What are the other ways that you think about your life? Health, financial, spiritual, social. Those are some good ones, guys. Any others? Just those four. Relationship, good. Nice that, we have something with other people over there. So, yeah, it's the fact that there's something more beyond that. And what I found is I used to work with global executives and Olympic athletes and coaches, and we always used to try and do what's called vertical development with them, which is kind of trying to get them to rethink about who they are and their identity and things like this in order for them to be able to achieve more. But you can't really do that until you help people get what they actually want to start with, because we all have these things that are bugging us. Like, okay, we want better relationships. We want to improve our spirituality. We're thinking about our health and fitness. There's no point just trying to work with people in getting them to think about something else when that's front of their mind. So really, that's what we focused on creating at Strive first, which is just what I wanted to show you. So there is this exercise. Now, you don't need a tool like this to be able to do it. If you've got a pen and paper, I do encourage you to pull one out now and do this exercise for yourself, because it will be really useful. Not to give you any homework or stuff, but one of the things we realized at Strive is that there's this exercise in personal development where it's called the Wheel of Life, and you pick those different categories that you guys have just talked about, and you score yourself from 1 to 10, like 1 being like, okay, I haven't even got close to living my dream life, and 10, I'm living absolutely my dream life. And you say, oh, well, I'm about a 6 right now. But what happens a lot in personal development is the coaches pick those categories for you, and they say, right, these are the 8 categories, you must live by them. And who wants to do that? So they kind of took the personal out of personal development. So one of the things we did at Strive straight away is we made it so that it was all editable. So something like this is you can go in and change any of the categories. So it can be like Pam's profit plan or whatever it wanted to be for Pam in her case, or something like that. But for you, just spend 20, 30 seconds thinking about what are the categories you really care about. So we've heard a few already, but you may have your own. And there's some reminders on the screen as well that you may also be interested in. You can pick and choose. You may only have 2 or 3, or you may have 7 or 8, 9 or 10. Some people have 12. They go crazy. But it's just to start thinking about it and just to start looking at your life in a more holistic approach. And the reason I'm kind of so passionate about this is growing up, My mum was a single mum, and she had her own companies, and so she worked like crazy to give like a childhood that, for me, better than what she'd had. But unfortunately, she was so like focused and disciplined and determined on her business, on just one part of her life, and didn't think about her health and the other aspect or the impact on me. Now, I was really thankful for it, but she feels guilty for it. She actually ended up in hospital and nearly died when I was 11 years old, just from overwork. And I see so much of this all the time. So with the 12,000 people I've got to work with in the last year, when I speak with them, and build the online communities and survey them, the word that always comes through, no matter what you're talking about, is the word lack. They always feel something is lacking in life, from how they think it should be and how it currently is. And they normally feel there's lacks in 3 areas. Either they feel something's lacking in themselves, they're not funny enough, smart enough, sexy enough, attractive enough, whatever it is. They feel they're lacking some resource, like time, money, freedom, whatever that might be. Or they feel like they're lacking in the relationships, like Dale said. These seem to be the 3 big areas. They don't have enough time with their friends. They're not able to balance family time with work. So something always feels missing. And when something feels missing, one, that's just not fun. We don't want that. But also, it then becomes very difficult for us to give more of ourselves to other people, because why would we give ourselves either our time, and this is just a great way to start actually assessing from the point of view of, okay, where are the gaps in my life? Where do I need a bit more attention? And all we did is we created a tool to make that really easy. So from a very big picture, I'm not going to go through it all, but very big picture plan to see where the gaps are. So let's say Pam's finances, she was rocking, so that was a 9. But her career and mission, seeing as you've just changed the name, Pam, it was a 5. Or health and fitness was up here. I'm just going to put in some random arbitrary numbers now. But allowing yourself to do this just allows you to get a visual straight away of where you want to be, where you need to focus. It immediately takes us, it's a bit of a, what's the right word to say it without offending the neuroscientists? It's a bit of a myth that 70% of the brain is only focused on optical processing, but it's a large portion. We're very visual creatures, okay? So just being able to actually stop and think about this and think about where the gaps are is the first step in designing the life that you actually want, seeing what's missing. And then the next step is obviously to start setting some goals to do that. So we help people do that with being able to put goals in and then filter them into the different categories and creating these one-page plans. But I'm not going to go all through that. I just wanted to highlight that by doing that, what you're doing is you're creating a much more solid vision and future of what it is. And it's so vital to do that in terms of it being easy to make good decisions every single day to lead to the life you want. And so now, to transition away, because I didn't want to make this all about the product that we've got, because it feels a bit weird. But I just wanted to share, because it's a useful exercise to do that, to see where you are. But I wanted to share some research about why it's so important to do this. So hopefully in our time here, you'll be doing it every month or something like that and keeping track and then seeing how is your wheel expanding and is it becoming what you want it to be in all areas, so you don't end up crushing it in one area but still feeling completely unfulfilled, because that's not what we want at all. So let me just scroll down here. Do we have a timer, by the way? How long have I got? Am I already over?
So we usually do about 20 minutes.
And
You're good.
okay,
Yeah,
I'll go fast then. So does that all make sense so far in terms of a more holistic approach? So now I just want to, what can sometimes happen is, so 2 points there, the more holistic approach and then actually setting some goals to say, right, well, if I'm at a 4 out of 10 in this area, this is what I'm going to do to get it to move forward. Now, the first thing that always happens when we say that, and we push people to go, but what is a 10 out of 10 life for you? Like, what is the absolute best? Quite often what people will tell you, at least when you're coaching them, is actually their number 6. It's not really what they absolutely want because they feel too afraid to set it that big. Because it's either, I'm not good enough, or who do I think I am to want that or to dream. Does. It always does. And it's not that, oh, can I sort my battery out? And it's not the topic for this. This was actually what the TEDx was. Oh, perfect, thank you. This was actually what the TEDx was about, is that what happens is people have this idea of what's going to make them happy and fulfilled. And then they say, and their option to overcome that lack of fulfillment is they say, okay, well, I'll be happy once I've got that thing. So it's a bit of a dangerous option because how long is it going to take? And a few things happen. Either you don't achieve that goal because it's out of your control, so you never even make it there, or you actually, even worse sometimes, you get that goal and it's not enough. So what do they do then? They then go even more excess. So now I don't want to earn 100,000, I want to earn 1 million, or one of that, and it goes on and on and on. Or they feel as though they're never going to be happy doing that, and they get depressed. And you actually have to help them develop beyond that and want something different and change their values or their consciousness. That's what I was talking about with vertical development. But it can always expand in what I call horizontal terms as well, of just wanting more money or wanting more connection or wanting something else. It always happens in essence. But that growth, that purpose and fulfillment still comes from growing into that. Because you'd get bored. If you actually get all what you want and then don't set new goals, you'd be bored as hell. But it doesn't work the same to say, okay, well, I'll always keep that gap and never achieve those goals. I'll feel great then, because you still want to be achieving and progressing. Does that answer the question? No? Okay, we can discuss more afterwards. So, in terms of how we actually make decisions, there's really 2 rules we follow as human beings. First is, more is better than less. That's showing on the screen. So, we all know which we'd choose, right? Out of, if someone offered us $60 now or $50 now, we were just going to give it to you, who would choose the $60 now? Right? It's a one-question IQ test. It's pretty simple. So we all go for that one. Then the second way we think about decisions is now is better than later. So if we offered you $60 now or $60 in 1 month from now, who's going to take the 1 month from now? Oh, sorry, the now. Who's going to take the $60 now? Right? Everybody. So those are the 2 ways we make sense of the world and our decisions. The problem is when they collide. So we take $60 now. So what happens when there's a conflict between them? What happens when you get offered $50 now or $60 in 1 month? And this is a very common thing to do with like short-term gratification and long-term, what is ultimately the thing you want. And it's amazing. We are so impatient as human beings. Most people choose the $50 now. You have to offer people interest rates in the thousands of % to get them to wait in order to take that longer term thing, which is absolutely crazy how impatient. What happens if you offer someone $50 now or $60 a month from now? Well, we found out that they take the $50 now, unless you offer them insane interest rates. Unless you're telling them, okay, we'll give you $1,000 in a month. Will you wait a month then at least? So, oh, 12 months and say, do you want $50 from now or do you want $60 13 months from now? And what's so weird is they change their answer. So even though it's exactly the same thing, is waiting a month worth the $10 extra, they actually change, like, they change their decision based on that. And the weirdest thing about that is that they actually think they are going to be like a better version of themselves 12 months from now. And then as you approach and get closer to that point where you thought you'd make that better, good long-term decision, you actually change your decision to a much more short-term focus. And what this means is that this causes a huge problem. There's a quote, it's a bit out there, but I'll try and share it. It's because what space is to time, time is to value. The fact that it's so difficult for us to ascribe value to things in the future because they're just so fuzzy and we can't actually easily recall them because we don't set enough of a vision for them. They aren't real enough for us to hold on to them in our mind, to put enough value onto them. So when you move the $50 one 12 months from now and you move the $60 one 12 months from now, they both lose their tangible value. So then it becomes easy to choose the $60 one. Now it can get a bit confusing. Does that make sense there? Kind of as you shift it out, the difference between them becomes so much smaller. So we've got to figure out how we can try and apply that same principle to make better decisions today. Because otherwise, what happens is you'll keep setting these really good intentions for the future, and then as you approach that, you just make short-term decisions again. That's why so many people set goals, and then as like in the moment decision comes to not drink that glass of wine, or to not have that cigarette, or to go to the gym or not, we set a great intention before, then as it gets the day of the decision, the more tangible thing of staying in bed or enjoying that glass of wine or something becomes much more real. Because the long-term vision isn't solid enough. So the only way to overcome this bias is to scale that difference between them. You've got to either give people the hundreds of thousands in percent, like the difference you make it, so the fact that you would wait for $1 million in a month from now. Let me go through this. Sorry, it's a slightly different one. But what happens is when you do that and say, okay, I'm going to set that bigger vision, you think you're going to get disappointed. How am I doing on time? Left.
I mean, you have 1 minute and you're 20.
Okay, then I'll show.
There's been Q&A during your talk. So.
No, but we'll make more Q&A because I've kind of gone all over the place a bit anyway because it was pulling from another presentation where there was more time. But so my point really is that if you want to design your life and make better decisions, there's kind of 3 things you have to do. You want to take the holistic approach to start with in terms of what it is personally for you, and understand where the gaps are so you don't put all your effort and energy into a life that ends up not being the one you want. You have to create research shows you have kind of an optimism bias where you see yourself being more in control of achieving those goals, and you don't actually end up getting disappointed. You actually give yourself more anticipation in order to achieve it and be excited by it. And the other important thing is that the level of clarity about the long-term goals is the only thing that can help overcome that bias to always make short-term decisions. Because the more clear you are, the more easy you can recall it, and the more attention you can put on something, the more you value it. I'll actually show you that, and I don't have much time, but I'll show you that. Here we go. So this is to do with the simple choice. So I'm going to show you something in a second, and regardless of what is your normal preference, I mean, it'll be difficult to overcome it, but I'm going to show you something and see which one you would prefer to have. It'll last about 10 seconds, okay? So everybody watch the screen. Okay, who would rather have the Doritos? Okay, 4, 5, 6. Who would rather have the Cheetos? Okay, 1, 2, 3. So about 70% went for the Cheetos. And that's what happens in the research as well. It's about 78% in the research, because the Cheetos, you probably saw, was shown 3 times as long as the Doritos. And what they found in the research is that they all choose is that the more you fixate on something, the more you weight the value of that object. So just by having a clearer sense of what the future life you want to create is, and having some way to have it in front of you, that was kind of the why we built that product. But even if you just write it down or put it on your phone or whatever it is, that speed of recall, and there's a bunch of other research I can share with you about that, makes it more valuable. And that's what creates that bigger difference between the $50 and the $60. So you're more likely to make the long-term decisions of going to the gym, not having that cigarette, or having that glass of wine.